Tonight, the long-awaited exit. Dozens of Canadians get out of Gaza.
They're finally going to Cairo, and it's been a nightmare.
But hundreds of families are still left in the dark.
We haven't heard anything yet about my dad's exit.
As Israelis mark 1 month since the deadly Hamas attacks. Heavily armed police raid an innocent family's home in Edmonton. The wrongful takedown caught on camera. Plus, answering the call on smartphone addiction.
We're just understanding right now what some of these potentially negative effects of them may be.
Canadian researchers reveal the risks of too much screen time.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Exactly 1 month since the deadly Hamas attack, 75 Canadians, the first to leave Gaza, crossed the Rafah border into Egypt today. In Jerusalem, at the sacred Western Wall, Israelis mourned the victims gunned down at the music festival. Also there, families of the hostages still held captive, including Rachel Goldberg's 23-year-old son.
We cannot forget there are 240 people buried, but very much alive under Gaza. The hostages have been underground in Gaza for 32 days!
In Gaza, Israel's air and ground offensive has crushed entire cities. Also today, in response to Benjamin Netanyahu's comments, Israel will take over security in Gaza indefinitely. The White House had this to say.
The president maintains his position that a reoccupation by Israeli forces is not the right thing to do.
CTV's Kevin Gallagher leads us off.
Israeli airstrikes shook Gaza today, even in the south, where displaced Palestinians have been told to seek safety.
They show their might and power against civilians. Babies inside, kids inside.
It's a risk more than 600 Canadians, permanent residents, and family members share in the territory.
Obviously, it's very good news. So we've gotten dozens of Canadians across the Rafah crossing, but there are hundreds to get out. So we're going to continue to work day and night until all Canadians and their families are out of Gaza.
It's been stressful.
Noor Al-Bachaniji is feeling relief as her 72-year-old father made it out.
He's waiting medical attention because he did fall and hurt his back.
Mohanad Shurnab's wife and 2 kids also found safety.
They are on the bus. They're finally going to Cairo, and it's been a nightmare.
Pediatrician Ihab Badr is stuck in northern Gaza. His wife is frustrated by Ottawa's response.
When I tell them that we need a safe passage to the south, they say risk it on your own. Unbelievable.
The Israeli military has much of northern Gaza encircled as it targets Hamas and its top commanders. This Israeli Defense Force spokesperson again rejected international calls for a ceasefire unless Israeli hostages are released. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli forces may stay in Gaza even if Hamas is defeated.
I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility because we've seen what happens when we don't have it.
Canadian Embassy staff provided buses for those fleeing Gaza for the 6-hour drive to Cairo. Canadians will get food, shelter, and medical care. But the Egyptian government says they can only stay for 72 hours, Omar, before flying out at their own expense.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Some of the sharp and caustic division in the Middle East has spilled over to Canada with a rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Quebec's Jewish community is on edge tonight after the attempted arson of a synagogue and community center, prompting police to step up their patrols of potential targets. Here's CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin.
On a synagogue's front door, evidence suggests hate has hit all too close to home, says the longtime cantor of Beth Tikva, Henry Topaz.
Well, we found the markings of fire on the door, and we realized that it has started. There is now a Molotov cocktail on the exact anniversary of the atrocities committed by Hamas.
Adding to concerns, a second firebomb was found at the Jewish community center next door. The damage at both is minor, but the impact widespread. Over the past month, there has been a spike in hate crimes, both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, right across the country. Police forces have beefed up security near both synagogues and mosques.
We are asking our officers to go around particular places that has been targeted.
In the wake of the event here, there's a call for politicians to do more so that police crack down on those who incite hate. Community leaders point to speeches delivered at protests in recent days, saying they fear words increasingly translate into acts of violence. And they're concerned further escalation could have tragic consequences. South of the border, a Jewish man in California died of a blunt force head injury during dueling Israeli and Palestinian rallies. Police say they're investigating conflicting accounts, still piecing together what happened, and for now have not classified this as a hate crime. Still.
Do we need that here? Do we need that here for the politicians to say, Mr. Police Chief, please act with haste?
For now, Montreal police are going door to door, scouring surveillance footage to track down those they suspect aim to spread fear. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Also in Quebec tonight, police have charged a teenager with the death of a 3-year-old, a loss that has shattered a community on Montreal's North Shore. CTV's Vanessa Lee on what we know so far.
People in this small Montreal suburb are grappling with tragedy, wondering how a toddler could have been killed in their community. This neighbor says he saw the boy's mother sobbing uncontrollably. I can't imagine her pain, he says. Police say they arrested 3 people. So far, only 19-year-old Yassine Mehanawi has been charged, accused of criminal negligence causing death, possession of an illegal firearm, and obstruction of justice.
The investigation is still going on, so I can't talk more about the case.
Authorities won't say if he has a connection to the toddler, believed to be 3 years old. Police are releasing few details other than they received a 911 call at 5:30 yesterday afternoon about a child that was severely injured. Divers are searching the river behind the home for any evidence related to the killing. Tonight, Mehanawi is behind bars. He is due back in court on Thursday for a bail hearing. Police say a 17 and 19-year-old were released, but there may be more charges as the investigation evolves. Omar.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. The RCMP's policing problems are putting national security under threat, according to a committee of MPs and senators, which hears witnesses behind closed doors. Their findings released today reveal Mounties can't effectively protect Canadians because of outdated training, weak governance, and poor data management. The committee is urging the public safety minister to intervene. RCMP in Alberta are apologizing, and an Edmonton family is outraged after their home was raided. The incident involving a police tactical team came after reports of a kidnapping that turned out to be false. CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier explains.
The police entry was quick at the back and the front of this North Edmonton house.
Lay down on the ground, on your stomach.
Within seconds, several young people were outside on the ground. The terrified reaction of the family captured by home surveillance cameras.
We're not going to be shot, right? No, you won't. Okay, I'm just really scared. What are you doing for my grandson? Lay down.
Well, they're pretty traumatized.
James Potts lives in the home with his parents and his kids. He was also taken into custody that day. He's demanding to know why his home was raided, even though it turned out no crime had been committed.
I just cannot believe how this tactical team treated my family and these kids.
We did definitely regret what happened there.
RCMP say they were working on reports of a kidnapping that turned out to be false.
We found out after the fact, and now that we know that there was, in fact, no kidnapping.
According to police, a man texted several family members that day saying he had been abducted and was being held at gunpoint. Mounties believed he had been in this home and another at some point, so they sent Edmonton police tactical crews into both homes to rescue him.
Those officers were going into that residence with the best intentions, thinking they were saving somebody's life.
The man was later found unharmed, Police are now investigating his actions. Potts says RCMP contacted him and apologized, but he still wants an explanation.
I can't even believe that the police think that they can get away with these actions.
Mounties say their investigation has now turned from kidnapping to public mischief, a charge for any action that results in a false police report. If convicted, it can carry a 5-year maximum jail sentence. Omar.
All right, Bill, thank you. When it comes to emergencies, minutes matter, but a nationwide ambulance shortage means patients are waiting longer for life-saving treatment, creating desperation and despair. CTV's Heather Wright spoke to a woman who knows about that firsthand.
She was screaming. We couldn't put our hands on her.
For more than 4 hours, Wendy Gunn watched as her 99-year-old aunt writhed in pain on the floor of her bedroom. Muriel Patty had fallen during the night and was discovered by a nurse at her retirement home. The nurse called 911 and they waited.
Another hour passed and I'm a little bit frantic.
Gunn called back but was told to keep waiting as it was a busy day.
And by this time, we're now into the 4th hour of her waiting for an ambulance.
Muriel Patty was lying face first on the floor, unable to move. She whispered to her niece that she was going to die.
I really believed that she might die there, and I didn't want that to be the last few minutes that she had.
Eventually, an ambulance arrived and Patty was taken to hospital, where she was diagnosed with a fractured vertebra.
We need to fix it. It can't be like this. It's an unreasonable amount of time for anybody to wait.
Across the country, paramedic services are struggling to keep up, with many reaching crisis levels.
It's getting to be a daily occurrence that we're running down to 0 ambulances available quite regularly.
There's no single cause of the ambulance shortage. Increasing call volumes, stretched budgets, long offload waits at hospitals, and staff shortages all contributing to wait times going up. Last year in Alberta, more than 22,000 paramedic shifts went unfilled due to sick days and burnout. While in Nova Scotia, the average wait time rose in 2022 from 14 minutes to 25, an increase of nearly 79%. And in an emergency, minutes can mean the difference between life and death.
The bottom line is we need to get more paramedics on the road.
The Ontario government says it has allocated $51 million to help get patients from ambulances into hospitals more quickly. But frontline workers say systemic change is needed, with call volumes projected to keep rising. Omar.
All right, Heather, thanks. Coming up, hung up on smartphones.
And sometimes people use their phones to avoid negative feelings.
The impact of what's being called a worldwide addiction. Plus, a wild bear with an appetite makes a steal. The largest study by a team of Canadian researchers looking at smartphone use has concluded that the very devices created to help us connect are causing us to disconnect from ourselves and each other. CTV's Adrian Gobriel on the new data and what's being described as a global addiction.
In many ways, they've become an extension of our bodies. For nearly every waking hour, many are attached to them. The findings in a new report tracking our addiction to smartphones reveals a troubling trend.
We know among young people there's reductions over time in things like exercise, things like in-person socializing.
This study is one of the largest of its kind. They surveyed about 50,000 people in 195 different countries, and it's giving us the first glimpse of the negative consequences of smartphone use.
Smartphones have proliferated really quickly, and we're just slowly realizing some of these effects.
Researchers calculated their findings using what's known as the smartphone addiction scale, which includes a list of 10 questions.
Whether their phone interferes with concentration at work, or whether they're anxious when they don't have their phone on them.
The findings uncovered that across much of the world, women are more likely to be addicted to their phones. In Canada, 56% of females aged 18 to 22 reported problematic usage.
Canada was right in the middle, so there's quite a few countries who had higher scores than ours, and those rates would be even higher.
The countries with the highest, most concerning scores were the Philippines, Malaysia, and Bangladesh, while the lowest problematic smartphone usage was found in the Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Portugal.
Smartphone addiction is a huge problem. I know because I suffer from it.
Self-help book author Neil Pasricha has studied remedies for those who simply can't put their phone down. He's even experimented with putting his own device in a lockbox each night.
We got to keep your cell phone out of the bedroom. Get a landline if you desperately think you're important or if you think you need one. And I say start the day and finish the day with a little bit of reading fiction, a little bit of journaling.
With smartphone addiction rates increasing globally each year, researchers hope their findings will encourage others to untether and unwind. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
For the first time since 1951, a king opened a new session of the British Parliament.
My minister's focus is on increasing economic growth and safeguarding the health and security of the British people for generations to come.
Wearing the imperial state crown and robe of state, and in keeping with tradition, Charles set out the Prime Minister's priorities, just as his mother did for 7 decades. Those priorities this session include expanding oil and gas drilling in the North Sea, clashing with the monarch's personal beliefs, who as prince was a public supporter of environmental causes. Still ahead, delaying the dentist.
The biggest things can be gum disease or small issues.
Why Canadians are skipping their visits. If you haven't visited a dentist in a while, a new snapshot reveals you're not alone. And a major barrier is cost, leading a quarter of Canadians to skip their checkups. CTV's Chris Najgate drills in on the details and the impact.
As more Canadians are choosing not to go for a dental checkup, dentists say it will create more issues in the long run.
The biggest things can be gum disease or small issues that if we saw you every 6 months, we would have caught.
Dr. Corey George says there has been a rise in patients not able to come in, with affordability being the main cause.
It has ended up with some problems that we could have avoided, but now it's a little bit more of a invasive treatment plan.
According to Stats Canada, 1 in every 4 people have not seen a dentist in the last year. Nearly 1/4 of those surveyed said they avoided dental care due to the cost, and 35% said they have no dental insurance.
For somebody who doesn't have a health plan, I could see it being difficult, very difficult.
I'm retired, so it's a little easier for me than somebody that's raising 3 or 4 children.
The Canadian Dental Association says the federal government's dental care plan couldn't come soon enough.
Make sure that there's a strong preventive component, make sure that we keep people out of pain, and make sure that the individuals get the care that they need.
The $13 billion dental plan will cover millions of Canadians with family incomes of less than $90,000 a year, a plan the NDP says it has been pushing for decades.
We estimate 9 million Canadians who don't have dental insurance now will have dental insurance as a result of the NDP pushing this program.
Stats Canada also noted that cost was more likely a barrier for racialized people. The National Dental Insurance Plan is expected to start by the end of this year. Chris Najgate, CTV News, Halifax.
Police in BC responded to a rather bizarre break and enter. That's a bear that got into the driver's seat of this minivan in Port Moody, but couldn't get out over the weekend. Leanne Cedarberg was not home, so her son called his mom to tell her police were on the way.
I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, there's a bear in your car. I'm like, what?
Cedarberg's son used the fob to open a door and let the midnight prowler out, but the struggle to escape was real. And a family in Florida was left starving after burglars stole their dinner. The culprit, a black bear that picked up the $45 Taco Bell order right off their front porch. It's a real shame. Far more expensive, one of the rarest jewels on earth that just sold for $60 million at Christie's in Geneva. The vivid blue diamond is the largest of its kind to ever be put up for auction. Christie's says the 17.6 carat gemstone is also the most expensive jewel sold at auction this year. After the break.
It also brought peace to Mark to be able to give these dolls to the children.
A special tribute to a fallen Canadian soldier. On any given day, Canadians in community centres, church halls, and homes across the country are quietly creating tributes to a Canadian veteran who died 30 years ago. But his legacy of compassion, especially for children, is still very much alive. Here's CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver.
Sewn into the heart of this small church southwest of Ottawa is a desire to bring happiness to children thousands of kilometres away.
Yeah, you just put your imagination into them, and if you're happy and smiling when it's done, then you know the child that's going to get it's going to be the same way.
Shirley O'Connell has hand-stitched and stuffed thousands of these pocket-sized Izzy dolls since she was first inspired by an article in 2005. Each is unique, but all are a tribute to Master Corporal Mark Isfeld, a Canadian combat engineer who gifted his mom's homemade dolls to children in war zones in need of comfort.
It also brought peace to Mark to be able to give these dolls to the children. And he became known as the soldier who collected little hearts and little handshakes and little smiles.
Isfeld, nicknamed Izzy, was killed in 1994 while on a peacekeeping mission in Croatia. He was just 31.
This is new for me, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
3 decades later, the tiny toys first created by his mom are still being made, with an estimated $2 million donated to children in combat and disaster zones, including most recently in Ukraine.
I was at that time a major.
Peter Bartlett was Isfeld's officer commanding.
It is just amazing, and speaks so clearly to Mark's heart and his compassion and his sense of service. It's a contagion, really, and it's wonderful to still see it at play.
And I said, I brought my knitting so it would help me keep my mouth shut.
Here, every stitch comes with a laugh and a conversation that strengthens a tight-knit community.
Doing our little bit to help.
For O'Connell, this doll made by Mark's mom and the poem attached to it a prized possession.
At the end of the poem, she said, when you took your cape off, you sprouted wings. So every knitter, not just me, every knitter that makes the Izzy dolls, she considered one of her angels.
A troop of angels devoted to sharing a special story of life and of love. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
And we hope you'll join us this Saturday for our live coverage of Remembrance Day from the National War Memorial in Ottawa, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. And that's a snapshot of this Tuesday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow. Good night.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.
Canadians have turned to CTV National News for more than 60 years.
And now there's a new national newscast at 5:30.
It's more of the news you trust.
More of the experience you rely on.
Watch Canada's #1 national news now at 5:30 and 11.